Hello everybody, this is Rick Prokop and welcome to Piano Power Lessons. Today we're going to be looking at a very interesting concept in music, and it's called tritone substitutes. But before we do that, I'd like to start with the concept of intervals that are equal in dimension. For example, if we have a minor third, B to D, that's 1.5 steps. Minor third, E flat to G flat, that's 1.5 steps. So they're equal in dimension so far. Minor third, G and B flat, that's 1.5 steps. So all three of these are equal in size or dimension. So now that we're talking about equality of dimension or of size, it's sort of like looking at an algebraic expression where one side might be 6 plus 2, which equals 8, and the other side is 4 plus 4, which equals 8. But they look completely different, but they equal the same thing, just as the B to D, the E flat to G flat, and the G to B flat all look different, but in a sense they're equal, and they're equal in size. So using the equation as an example, I should be able to take each one of these minor thirds and propose some theory about one of them, which should apply to the rest of them. So if I take the B and D, if it's a minor third, I could say, well, if I take a major third below this B, I get a major triad. You go, okay, that's great. Let's see if it happens for something that's equal in quantity, the E flat, G flat. Well, let's call it D sharp, F sharp now. So we have D sharp, F sharp. Over here, I came down a major third, got a major triad. Here I have a minor third. I come down a major third. Hey, I have a major triad. Let's look at the G, B flat. Come down a major third from the G. Hey, I have a major triad. So it's working as planned. In Unit 2, you learned that a major 6 was 1/6 of any major scale. So a major 6th above B flat would be G. And a major 6th above D flat would be B flat. So D flat to B flat's a major 6th. And a major 6th above E is C sharp. E to C sharp being a major 6th. So if I begin with the B flat G major 6th and say, I'm going to go up a perfect fourth from this B flat to the E flat, the result is a second inversion major triad, in this case, E flat major. Similarly, if I take the D flat to the B flat major 6 and say, hey, I'm going to go up a perfect fourth from the D flat to the G flat, the result is a second inversion major triad, in this case G flat major. And likewise, if I begin with the E, C sharp major 6, and I go a perfect fourth above this E, I get, lo and behold, a major triad and second inversion, in this case A major. Now the last lesson, I believe it's lesson 14 in Unit 2, on intervals, deals with inversions of intervals. And the gist of it is this: if you begin with a third, it could be a major third, minor third, doesn't matter, and then I take the bottom note and bring it up an octave, we have what's called an inversion of that interval. And the gist of it is that you use the number 9 to subtract this number, the 3, from. So you get 9 minus 3 is a 6th. and the inversion is a sixth, and vice versa. So if I begin with a sixth, I subtract the 6 from a 9, and I get a third. And this happens with whatever interval you use. If we have a second, 9 minus 2 is 7. So when I bring this C up to here, now I have a seventh. 9 minus 2 is 7. And then if I want to find the inversion of a seventh, 9 minus 7th is 2. And there's our second. And then we found out if you begin with a minor interval, it converts to a major interval, and vice versa. A major interval inverts to a minor interval. And then we found out that diminished intervals, in this case, a B to an F, inverts to an augmented interval. So a diminished fifth, D to B, inverts to an augmented fourth, right? So the fifth, 9 minus 5 is 4, and it's diminished, so we're going to get the inversion of diminished is augmented, the inversion of a fifth is a fourth, so we get an augmented fourth, F to B. So now we're in Unit 4, and we've delved deeply into dominant seventh chords, and they're tritones, yes? So even though this is, in terms of G7th, a diminished fifth, and still in terms of G7th, this is an augmented fourth, right? We have the third and the seventh of G, and then the seventh and the third. The curious thing is that they're both tritones. So when we invert a tritone, we get a tritone back. So it's the only interval that, when inverted, is equal in dimension to its new inversion. Even though it has the name diminished fifth, augmented fourth, there's still 3 whole steps, aren't they? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So this tritone dimensionally equals this one. Forget about the diminished fifth, the augmented fourth. You have 2 tritones now that are equal. So if this equals this, then I could come up with a theory. I could say if I go down a major third from this bottom one, I get the root of a 7th chord. And I'm left with G, B, F, or the root, third, and the 7th. And then we could fill it in, and you see G7th. Oh, yeah. Similarly, I could take this tritone, which is equal to this dimensionally, and say, well, I'm going to come down a major third from this F now. I'm going to go F, E flat, D flat. And I'm going to change the name of this B to a C flat. So now I have a D flat 7th chord here, using that same tritone. So this is the root, this is the third now, and this is the 7th, but we've changed the name of the B to a C flat because it's a D flat 7th chord. D flat, F, A flat, C flat. So as a result, this tritone is analyzable in terms of 2 different roots. If we use the G as a root, it's the third and the 7th. If I come down here and play a D flat, it's reversed. This is D flat, this is F, that's the third now, and this is a C flat, which is the 7th. So this one tritone is analyzable perfectly legitimately using 2 different roots. Let's take a look at the other triad, the inversion of that one. So here we establish, well, this could be a D flat 7th, and we have the root, the third, and the seventh. But if I introduce the G now, it's flipped over. This is the root, this is now the third, and this is a B now, where it was a C flat for the D flat seventh chord. It was a C flat, but now we rename it B, and that's the third of the G, and then we have the seventh, and we have our dominant seventh G. Well, this is going to freak you out now, because we're going to see if this entire D flat seventh chord, if all of the elements of this chord are analyzable in terms of the G on the bottom. In other words, is this D flat seventh chord, could it legitimately be considered some kind of G seventh chord? So first, let's look at a G ninth chord. G, B, D, F, A. Okay, and a ninth is just adding color to the seventh. Now, when you have a ninth chord, like this, you can start playing around with the ninth and with the fifth. So watch what I do with the fifth now. The D, I can make a flat 5. This is called G ninth with a flat 5. I can sharp the fifth and I have an augmented seventh here. And that would be called G ninth with a plus 5, or G augmented seventh with a ninth, G whatever. Okay, then I could leave everything as it is and start playing around with the ninth. I can lower the ninth to an A flat, and here I have a G seventh with a flatted ninth. And you've heard that before. All right, I can also sharp the ninth. And you've heard that before. It's a Jimi Hendrix chord. Okay, so starting with this G ninth chord, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to lower the D to a D flat. I now have a G ninth with a flat 5. Now I'm going to lower the ninth to an A flat, and so I now have a G seventh chord with a flat 5 and a flat 9. You see this? This is a D flat seventh chord in third inversion. So now I'm going to take this B and put it up here. So now, in terms of the numbers of the note, respectively in the chords, we have the root, we have the flat fifth, we have the seventh, we have a flat 9, and we have the third. So G, D flat, flat 5, 7, flat 9, A flat, and the B is the third. And there's our tritone. And the tritone is enabling all this to happen. And this resolves very nicely to C. And I'm sure you've heard this before. See? So now we've shown that a D flat seventh chord in its entirety is analyzable in terms of a G. Therefore, in some capacity, it's functioning as a G seventh chord. Is the same true for the inverse? Can I start with a G seventh chord and analyze all of these notes in terms of D flat? Remember, the tritone is here, so I have D flat, C flat, and F. Root, seventh, and third. So we'll approach this the same way we did with the D flat seventh over G. So we'll start with D flat seventh with a ninth. D flat, F, A flat, C flat, E flat. And this is a 5 chord that resolves to G flat. So if I take the 5th, I could flat that, and now I have a D flat 9th with a flat 5. I can also sharp the 5th, and now I have D flat augmented 7th with a 9th. Okay? All right, now I can fool around with the 9th. I can lower the 9th from a E flat to an E double flat. And that chord, of course, resolves to G flat nicely. Then I could do my Jimi Hendrix chord. I can raise this 9th, sharp it, and I have this. Right? So let's go back now to the flat 5 and the flat 9. Well, looky here. We have a 3rd inversion G7th chord. And let's see if it resolves nicely to G flat. And it does. So let's take this F now, and we recognize this G7th here, and it'll become even more apparent when we bring this F up to here. So now you clearly see a G7th over a D flat, and here's the original tritone of D flat 7th, which is the same as G7th, right? So all told, we have the root, the 3rd's up here now. This is the flat 5. This is the 7th, C flat. And this is the flat 9. Remember, this was the original 9th, and we lowered that. So all told, the resulting substitute chord is a 7th chord with a flat 5 and a flat 9. Simply that. Go back to G with the D flat 7th above it. It's G7th with a flat 9 up here and a flat 5. I should have said flat 5 first. Okay? Now the distance between this note and this note is a tritone, right? So if we use our little formula and I say, well, this could be D flat 7th, right? And then I use the formula down here, which is a tritone away, and say, no, it could be G. Well, the two roots then are a tritone apart. So if someone asks you, or if you're playing and you'd like to substitute a G7th with something else, you just think of, well, what's a tritone above or below a G? Similarly, if you're playing the key of F and you come to a C7th, what's a tritone substitute of C7th? Well, it's either a tritone above the C or below. It's an F sharp 7th. And the C7th resolves to an F, right? But an F sharp 7th also resolves to an F for the same reasons that we elucidated in the examples prior to this. So in the next lesson, I'm going to show you some scales that are opened up by this new discovery. So if we're in the key of C, and I hit a 5 chord, a G7th, I'm basically thinking white keys, because I'm in the key of C. But now, since the G7th can be substituted with a D flat 7th, let's take a look at what happens. Here's a D flat 7th. So I'm no longer in white keys now. I'm so far away from white keys that it's ridiculous. And it adds so much color and sparkle and surprises to your playing that it's just wonderful. So that's what we'll get into next lesson. What scales can you use with a dominant 7th chord? And in this case now, in any case, any key you're playing with now, you have two choices for your dominant 7th chord because of the tritone substitution effect. All right, so we'll see you next time.